November 30th, 2021. You will remember where you were in Oxford, Michigan. You will remember where you were at Oxford High. You will remember when a man came in with a gun shooting up 4 victims. You will remember the lawsuits that have happened. You will remember the parents on trial here. You will remember when Ethan Crumbley was not sent to juvie, he was sent to adult jail. Oxford, 1 year later. And now 1 year later, how Tate Marie and Justin Shilling families are coping after that horrific shooting. So let's take a look at this. And throughout the 1 year, we've covered all of Oxford, giving you guys update after update after update on what's been happening. And now they're hoping for the sentence that Ethan deserves, life in prison.
1 year later, how do you go on? Jill Suave was one of the parents who lost a child 1 year ago. Justin Shilling, just 17 years old.
When I think I can't, go on, I have to really surrender to God and say, please flow through me, work through me, help me to just, stay upright, be a mom to my kids, and really, staying connected to Justin, praying to him too, like, come on, give mom faith. We're going to have to get through this.
Suave hopes people remember Justin for his impact. She hopes people see Justin's photo, see the victims' faces, and take a moment to lift someone up.
I've had a lot of students and the close friends reach out and say just that, like, it's kind of cheesy, but what would Justin do? Justin would get up, he would try hard, he wouldn't give up. And just going out of your way to be kind to everybody.
Buck and Sherry Meir have been talking about how to approach this day for a while. Their son Tate was taken from them. Buck says he pours his life into the peer-to-peer mentoring organization he established, 42 Strong. He says Sherry is starting to become more engaged, but...
The first couple months after it happened, Sherry was holed up, and there was 2 spots that she would go to in town. And she would pick the times where there wasn't any people there, and she would go there and have her tea or her smoothie, and then she would come home, and that was her little escape out of the house. And so we talked about it, and she wants to give.
There's just some people I want them to know that I'm grateful for them, that they were there for me in the beginning and have been throughout this whole thing, and just to show my thanks.
The 3 are suing the Oxford School District. Their attorney, Ben Johnson, says it's about getting answers and holding those who could have prevented it accountable. But a big role for him this year has been to be there for these parents.
What I love and appreciate about these folks, my clients, is they've done everything that they can do legally to ensure that it never happens to anybody else's child.
And these parents' reaction to prosecutors asking for life in prison for the shooter.
Let's say he got 25 years, our kids aren't going to come back in that amount, so how would that be fair? So yeah, life to me would be the only option that I would really want.
Back here live in Oxford, can't tell you how much I appreciate these parents sitting down and sharing these feelings on this particular day, knowing how hard this day would be. Oxford Community mural right behind me here, center of town. We've seen families coming by, taking pictures all day today. Day of remembrance here, no school. Very somber day indeed. Devin, Kimberly, back to you.
And just remarkable strength from those parents today and the whole year. Sean, I know you spoke with a parent whose daughter was injured in the shooting too. What did she share with you?
The mother of Phoebe Arthur. Phoebe was shot in the chest and her neck. Long road ahead in the hospital after the shooting. She survived. Her mother said, school was out today, so just being together. She was so grateful for time with her daughter on this day today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, blessings to them and all of them. All right, Sean, we appreciate it so much.
So let's give you a quick recap here. Ethan Crumley is still in jail, but the courts are still going to decide whether he remains in jail or moves to a juvenile detention center because of his age, because the law has to continue with the hearings. Also, the parents are charged with involuntary manslaughter. Mountains of evidence have piled up. If Ethan's convicted, he could face life in prison without the possibility of parole, just like Nicholas Cruz. A lot of the family members have filed separate lawsuits against the school. Evidence is piled up like the drawings and why the counselor said did not search the backpack. Now, if the counselor had searched that backpack, there would not be a school shooting. He would have been sent home. Now the parents are like saying, just send him back to class. But if there's any more developments in this, we will keep you posted. We will keep you posted what's going on. Coming up next, a brand new school threat. I didn't get this until I saw it on Facebook. I was shocked and stunned that it happened. You'll see what happened. And then later, this man says that he never sexually harassed these women at Ford headquarters in Chicago. He says they're a big flirt. And the spokeswoman from Ford says she doesn't want to see all that sex videotape that happened. Stay with us. There is now another school threat that had happened. Now, I didn't get this notification until I saw it on Facebook. Scrolling through Facebook, and then all of a sudden, I was stunned and shocked that it would happen. And I felt pissed at this point. This is from William Rue of WRDW. In response to multiple media inquiries, this is the message sent out to Westside High parents from the morning. Says, in an effort to keep you informed, please be aware of an incident that occurred at a school this morning. Our student staff are safe. A potential threat against the school was called into Richmond County Sheriff's Office. The call used the same message and threats determined would be unsustained in other Georgia school districts this morning. Take all threats very seriously. Have abundance of the caution. The school is on lockdown. Status will law enforcement provide a full response. Additional information provided as law enforcement investigation is complete. Then updates are still going on. Parents make their way to reunite with the kids. There's a second update which says students that were safe. Law enforcement agencies have searched and cleared the school for students to return to class. School will continue with additional safety support and cameras for the remainder of the school day. Our students and staff are in the process of returning to classrooms. Once all students and staff are in place, lunch will be provided and we'll resume regular bell schedule. School councils are available for students needing support. Parents desire to pick up children and drive the financial school and follow the directions of the school resource officers. Okay. And now, here's what the sheriff's office has to say. 10:32 a.m. An active school shooter threatened 500 people at West Side. All available units have immediately dispatched the location of the RCSO SWAT team. They're working the FBI to determine who made that threat. It could be a generated message or a real person who made the call. The sheriff stated the response was almost immediate. They had a school resource officer on the scene and was made aware of the incident. Roundtree says, this is what deputies train for all the time. And I'm glad that happened. And I'm really glad this had happened. Because first of all, I take these threats very seriously. Every school district takes these threats very seriously. Very seriously. And now look at all the comments from Darius Jordan saying, thank God it wasn't any danger. Prayers for the school and families. Then 5 comments from and now there's just some video footage. Everyone's outside because of the lockdown. Everyone was injured, but again, I'm really I'm really glad this is it. So let's just take a look at the live footage and we're going to take a break.
Begins with dozens of first responders. And the Board of Education spoke with you about the situation at Westside.
Yeah, Jenny, those parents were not happy with how the situation was handled. They said the only information they received were from their students who were on lockdown. Richmond County Sheriff Roundtree and the Board of Education's police chief held a press conference earlier addressing these claims.
And we understand this is a very sensitive subject for our parents. Again, I want to rest and assure you that this was a complete cooperation with all involved, to include all EMS services, the Board of Education, and of course the Richmond County Sheriff Office. And the training that we do and the protocols and the relationships in which we have together was able to, again, resolve the situation without any injury.
Richmond County Sheriff's Office received a call just before 11 this morning saying there was an active shooter and 5 injured people at Westside High School. When word of the threat started to get out, dozens of parents showed up outside the school.
How many cars are here? Ambulance, fire trucks, the bomb squad. I seen somebody in an ATF jacket. I mean, it's real, but if it's a hoax, that's what they're saying now. But I didn't get anything from the school or any call. All this came from my daughter.
They say they are unsatisfied with the school board's lack of communication about the incident and told us they found out most of the information about the lockdown from their students.
If our students are calling us in a panic and now we're all up here, I think we're owed an explanation, and I don't think we should be sitting around waiting for one. I mean, just be honest, because our students are already going to tell us things, so we're already in a frenzy. So just go ahead and just rip the Band-Aid off and tell us, you know?
They dismiss everything. They don't take anything seriously.
After hours of waiting outside, parents say they were pulled aside by school board officials and told it was a hoax with no further information. Even though the lockdown was lifted and the school system said the school was safe, many parents decided to pull their kids out of school for the day.
I'm ready to talk to the district.
Sheriff Roundtree says the safety of the students is the first priority of the county.
Again, anytime you involve children in this sensitive nature of a school shooting, people are always going to feel that timely notification was granted, but our primary focus is the safety of the faculty and staff and the students.
Sheriff Roundtree also says that Richmond County, along with the FBI and GBI, are investigating to see where the call came from. Live in Augusta, Hannah Latier, WJBF News Channel 6.
And we'll keep you posted what's been going on. But I want to point out something. Okay, the letter says they take it very seriously, probably miscommunication. So if they miscommunicated, then we got to work on communication. That's the key. When you work in a fast food restaurant, communication is key. Coming up next, this man says he did not sexually harass these women at the Ford Motor Company headquarters in Chicago. This spokeswoman says she doesn't want to see that sex videotape. She says she's had enough seeing what happened. So who's telling the truth? You're also going to meet people who admit. You're also going to hear both sides of the story. I mean, you're going to hear both sides of the story. Stay with us. Yesterday, we looked into a case at the Ford Motor Company in Chicago where almost over 30 women spoke out, told their stories about having been sexually harassed at the Ford Motor Company. We've heard a lot of stories from breast touching, butt grabbing. We've also heard from people from the supervisors who say they never sexually harassed. But there's one person who was willing to come forward to tell his side of the story. Here's Chris Hansen.
You know, you're bending over, trying to do your job in the car, and woo-wee, nice piece of ass.
If you experienced this kind of harassment in the workplace, where would you turn? One place might be your supervisor.
I never seen anybody grab anybody by the butt or even suggested doing it.
Jerry Schoonover is one of dozens of foremen working at Ford's 2 huge Chicago plants. He's also one of the supervisors who's been accused of sexual harassment, and the only one who agreed to an interview with Dateline. Schoonover claims that the problem of harassment in Ford plants has been exaggerated, that many of the accusers are slackers trying to strike it rich.
It's a question of money. A way out for them, for those who don't want to work.
Schoonover has been accused of harassment by 4 different women. Tony Esri says Schoonover groped and threatened her.
It's not true. That's not true at all.
Jody Ferris says Schoonover stared at her rear end and bragged that he could have her. Schoonover denies it.
I heard that allegation. It's not true. If I stare at a piece of equipment, does it mean I want to have sex with it? I don't think so.
Do you think Jody Ferris misunderstood what you were doing?
No, Jody Ferris does not need a lawyer. Jody Ferris needs a psychologist. This woman is looking for a way out of the company. And I'm not going to be her meal ticket.
Ferris admits she's gotten psychological help, but says it's only because of all the harassment at Ford. Harassment that she says wasn't her fault. Schoonover tells a different story.
She's a big flirt. Very big flirt. I've seen her flirt with a lot of people.
You know, some people are going to see this and say, oh, fine. Go ahead and blame the victim.
These poor women are claiming sexual harassment in the workplace, and here's a guy who's blaming the woman.
I'm a victim. I'm a victim the same as they think they are. What about my feelings?
Even if a woman's direct supervisor isn't sympathetic, she could go over his head to Ford Labor Relations or the plant manager. But these women say even that didn't work.
I repeatedly asked for help, and I went to all the places Ford says go. They say you go to your union, you go to your supervisor, and you go to labor relations, and I did all 3 of those.
You might be thinking that even if the women couldn't get help from Ford, they could still count on their union. After all, the United Auto Workers is one of the most powerful and progressive labor groups in the world. A union that insists it has 0 tolerance for sexual harassment, and the women pay the union dues to protect them. Did you ever go to the UAW?
Yes.
And what were you told by your union rep?
That's why my wife doesn't work here.
So he just accepted this?
Yes. He said, this is a good paying job. And if you want this money, you have to put up with this.
And listen to what one union leader allegedly told 3 different women after they complained of harassment.
Oh, you got a nice body. Everybody knows you got a nice body. He said, Suzette, you're a pretty girl. Take it as a compliment.
So you tell me because you said I'm a pretty girl that I'm supposed to take this from this person?
The union leader they're talking about is Carl Bishop, who denies the charges.
I'm saying it's just another statement being allocated, okay, but it's not true.
Are these women lying?
That particular allegation never came to me.
Why would these women say this?
Well, I guess we're human. I guess people have reason to say things that's not true.
He said, and I quote him verbatim, and if I hadn't gotten to know you as well as I do now, I would have pursued something with you myself. And this is where I go for help.
And remember those sex parties workers have? Well, the head of the local union admits those are some of his men at the party.
Seeing that, I'm lost for words.
Is this appropriate behavior?
That's not appropriate behavior.
The people there were from your local.
And I recognize some of them. It's the first time I've seen this tape.
Dual Hendricks won't be head of the local union much longer. He'll soon be replaced by this man, who admits he attended the sex party. He says it was more than 10 years ago, and that he hasn't been to any of the more recent sex parties since then. Do you see why that bothers people?
Yes,
that would bother
it bothers me. Bothers me.
We wanted to know what the Ford Motor Company has to say about all of this. But before appearing on camera, Ford suggested we talk to 11 women from the same Chicago plants who insist sexual harassment isn't an issue for them.
I've been here 25 years and it never happened. Now, what the girl's saying now, I don't know, but it didn't happen to me. And if it did, I can handle it.
I've been treated great.
I think all of us women kind of support each other because there's so few of us.
This is too good of a job just to waste blowing a chance over like whistling at some woman or saying something like that. It's not going to happen.
Ford says it takes sexual harassment seriously and that what little problem there has been is largely in the past. Connie Orr, a human resources manager, was designated to speak to Dateline.
The men and women of Ford Motor Company in our plants and in our offices are dedicated, hardworking people, and the majority of them understand and know appropriate behavior.
Orr says that Ford's 2 Chicago factories are the only ones that have had problems out of 58 plants nationwide. And even at these 2 factories, she says the number of women who have complained is relatively small.
We certainly do not consider that the situation is widespread at all in these 2 plants.
But as far back as 1995, the government's Equal Employment Opportunity Commission concluded that, quote, a class of females have been subjected to a sexually harassing work environment fostered by non-management and management employees. We've talked to dozens of women who work in the 2 Chicago plants who have talked about unwanted advances, groping, pinching, rubbing, inappropriate language. Is the Ford position that this just hasn't happened?
Again, these are allegations, but the kinds of behaviors that you just described would totally be unacceptable anywhere in Ford Motor Company.
As you'll remember, some of that behavior included workers posting obscene graffiti in the factory, going back to 1995. We showed some of the pictures to Connie Orr. Now that's exactly what they're talking about.
It's totally unacceptable, and no woman or man should have to be confronted with that in the work environment.
I mean, this isn't just 1 or 2 lines scribbled with a pencil. These are offensive references to sex acts, people written about by name. As a woman, as an employee of the Ford Motor Company, how does it make you feel to see this kind of thing that was in one of the plants?
That would be very offensive, and I would not want any employee of Ford Motor Company exposed to that, which again is why when that type of material, if it's found, it's cleaned up immediately. And we try to ensure that it does not happen again.
Ford says that it's put up special walls and paint in bathrooms to try to stop graffiti. But there was at least one demeaning aspect of Ford factory culture Ford headquarters insists it had no knowledge of until Dateline brought it to the company's attention. The sex parties we showed you earlier. Let me show you just a couple of scenes from a videotape that was given to us.
I've seen enough.
Photos were taken, and we are told widely disseminated throughout one of the factories.
First of all, I have no idea what that videotape was, where it came from. I have no corroboration, confirmation that anyone in the company is involved in that.
But after our interview, Ford announced that it had disciplined 4 employees, including supervisors, for involvement in sex parties, in what the Chicago Tribune called an attempt to head off our report on Dateline. Ford also said it set up workshops to sensitize employees, brought in a consultant to investigate, and put in a toll-free hotline to make it easier to report abuse.
I'd also say to those employees, if you have a concern, any concern, bring it forward. Tell someone about it so we can stop it.
17 women told us that they tried to do exactly that. And it didn't work. In many cases, they were threatened or they were coerced not to continue. Are they lying?
I would say what I just shared with you, that we don't want employees working where they can't feel comfortable and do their best job building quality Ford Motor Company products.
Many women say Ford hasn't done enough, and that the boys will be boys attitude continues in the Chicago plants. And earlier this year, Ford, without admitting any wrongdoing, paid $1.5 million to 8 Chicago women to settle their complaints. Another 24 cases are pending. A number of the women we interviewed told us that really all they wanted was an apology. Has Ford actually gone to these women and apologized?
Specifically, I can't comment on that. I'm not able to talk about the specific case.
Before we could even get this story on the air, word of our investigation spread. Ford's sex parties became the stuff of late-night jokes.
You know, I've heard of Ford Escorts. I always thought that was a car. I had no idea.
But these sex parties and the attitudes they symbolize are no laughing matter to the women who are suing Ford. They say their scars still haven't healed, and that Ford as a company is to blame.
Do you fear that when your coworkers find out that you've spoken out like this, that there'll be retaliation?
Yes, I know there'll be retaliation, without a doubt.
Why then are you speaking out?
To put an end to it so that my daughters could come into this workforce and do an honest day's work for an honest day's pay and not have to go through the hell and the misery that I have to go through every day.
Now, after I watched this story, there were lawsuits that happened from CaseMind.com. This one talks about the man and norm opinion and order from the district judge. It was Warnell versus Ford Motor Company. In part, it says, as well as the state common law, a counseling case, Raper versus Ford Motor Company 98, also alleges the title VII and common law claims against Ford brought on behalf of purported class women employed at the assembly and stamping plant since January 1996. The plaintiffs now seek to compel the NBC company to turn over videotape deciding a sex party and or a Christmas party held by Ford Motor Companies, portions of which were aired June 1st, 1998. Broadcast news magazine Daylight NBC. For the following reasons, the motion to compel is granted. All this page to the end here. NBC's assertion that the production videotape will reveal the identity of the tape's source cannot be supported. The tape is relevant and reasonably calculated to discover dissimilar evidence is required by pursuant to FEDAR CIVP. In addition, the absence of confidentiality together with the tape's evidencing sexual harassment claims the plaintiff's inability to get the tape from the other sources overcomes reporters' privilege to claim NBC. Therefore, the plaintiff's motion to compel NBC to produce the sex party is granted. That's what the judge says. Now it's Gonzalez versus the National Broadcasting Company, where Gonzalez sued NBC because of that sex tape. Remember, this was all about that sex tape. September 1997, the district court issued an opinion order granting in part, denying in part to about that. It was all about that sex tape. All about that sex tape. But there probably wasn't any reasoning behind this. Coming up next, these women say they were sexually abused at prisons. Now, one person who worked at the prison and sexually harassed one of the women and married him is speaking out to tell his side of the story. Stay with us. Imagine as a prison employee, a male employee at a women's prison. Put him in prison, and yet you want to say, well, okay, you want to start some rumors. Exactly what happened. You're about to meet someone who came forward to tell his side of the story of when he sexually abused one woman and married a prisoner. And you're also going to meet women who say they were sexually abused at prison. Here again is Chris Hansen with our Dateline investigation.
Ladies, introduce yourself.
He says if I don't do what he wants, he's going to make my life, miserable in here.
Left, right, left.
He just told me, stand there and let me look at you.
He made my worst nightmares come true.
It's indescribable.
What is indescribable, the women say, is the abuse they suffered at the hands of men. Men who were paid by the government to watch over them. The women were inmates at prisons and jails across the country, run by counties, states, even the federal government. They admit they deserve to be there, to pay their debt to society for the crimes they committed. But they say their sentence did not include sexual abuse and exploitation at the hands of male corrections officers.
I'll just have one more.
Officers like Lyle Baker, who says that when he caught 2 inmates breaking the rules, he considered it an opportunity.
I caught 2 female inmates kissing in a mess hall. I sent the one back, and I told the other one, I says, meet you in the bathroom, we can go in there and, we'll have oral sex or whatever, and then otherwise I'll write you up. And I said, I'll make a ticket look good. And I said, you'll never get out of lock.
And she complied with this?
She complied with it. She didn't want no troubles.
How did you feel about yourself after that first experience?
I felt like I had the power. Like, oh, that was all right. I had control of a woman instead of a woman trying to get control of me.
No one would argue that Lyle Baker is typical of all male corrections officers in female prisons. And as you'll see later, he has a surprising personal reason for talking about this. But some human rights advocates believe Baker is a textbook example of a problem that prison officials throughout the country have not done enough to prevent.
You've got more women in prison, more men guarding them, and nobody minding the store. It's in essence a disaster waiting to happen.
Dorothy Thomas co-authored a report on sexual abuse in U.S. women's prisons for the group Human Rights Watch, which spent 2.5 years investigating women's prisons in 11 states. How would you describe the situation in the typical women's state prison today?
In essence, a highly sexualized, often very hostile environment in which all kinds of inappropriate sexual conduct are occurring and very little steps are being taken to do anything about it.
The United Nations is now investigating whether women's prisons in this country are violating international law. The U.S. Department of Justice is suing the states of Michigan and Arizona for failing to protect female inmates from sexual abuse. Charges both states deny. During a 6-month Dateline investigation, we reviewed hundreds of pages of documents and interviewed dozens of inmates, advocates, and prison officials across the country. It would be unfair to suggest that only male officers are capable of abuse, or that female inmates never make false allegations or seek to trade sex for contraband or special treatment. But putting male officers in close contact with female inmates has created significant problems and risks. And we found that in many cases, there are not sufficient safeguards to ensure that someone like Lyle Baker will be quickly caught and punished. How many women inmates do you figure you had sex with?
At least 7.
7?
At least.
You had a reputation for doing this.
Yeah, my name went around.
And a supervisor never talked to you?
Nope, not one.
This is the state prison where Lyle Baker worked for 6.5 years, Albion Correctional Facility in upstate New York, one of the largest women's prisons in the country. Albion made headlines 2 years ago when Amy Fisher, infamous for her affair with a mechanic named Joy Buttafuoco and for shooting Buttafuoco's wife, charged that 5 Albion officers had raped her. Fisher sued prison officials. Last year, a federal judge ruled that many of her charges were not credible. It also said there are indications that all is not right at Albion. Prison officials say they've worked to address those problems, and they granted us extensive access to the facility.
This is our mess hall down here.
Approximately 1,400 women are serving time here for everything from theft to murder. It may look like a campus, but this is a medium security prison. Inmates are closely supervised, and 4 out of 5 of the officers guarding them are men.
Okay.
There are some things that male officers are not allowed to do.
You changing? Yes, I am.
Like strip searching inmates or supervising medical exams. Still, it is mostly men who watch the inmates while they're working, and men who watch them while they're eating.
Ladies, get ready for call.
It is mostly men who make rounds past what are essentially their bedrooms, and men who are responsible for the security of the bathroom and the shower areas. Will you act accordingly? Officers have a lot of authority. Their direct orders must be obeyed. I'll too. Why don't you stand over here against this pole for a few minutes? Let me see what I'm going to do with you.
All right.
Hey, just stand over there. A disciplinary report written by an officer could cause an inmate to lose her work assignment.
She's probably going to get it if she does do it.
Be locked in a cell 23 hours a day, or even lose a chance at parole.
Do your top button and also your cuff buttons.
Male officers also pat frisk female inmates. This New York State training film demonstrates proper pat frisk procedure. Notice how this officer presses his hands against this inmate's body, probing under her breasts and between her thighs, looking for hidden weapons, drugs, or other contraband. Because many female inmates have histories of sexual abuse, a federal court ruled that pat frisking by male officers was cruel and unusual punishment in a Washington state prison. But in New York and many other states, the procedure is permitted.
They start from your shoulders.
But not all officers pat frisk by the book, according to Kathy Tasikas, a convicted robber with prior prostitution convictions. She spent 2 years at Albion and says one officer in particular would grope her and other inmates.
When he starts, he'll go and like this and around.
This is one specific guard
Right.
at Albion.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't anybody ever complain?
They complain, they write him up, they grieve him and everything.
But he's still there, still on the job.
He's still there. Nothing happened.
Back to the dorms around 10 o'clock.
Anjanelle Andrews, the superintendent of Albion, says she assigns supervisors to observe pat frisks whenever she hears complaints like those of Kathy Tasikas.
You have a double locker.
But Andrews says she receives very few complaints from inmates about pat frisks in particular, or sexual misconduct in general.
I think it's important that everyone recognize that Albion is not a sex-crazed institution.
As a woman, as a superintendent of a prison facility, are you comfortable with male corrections officers pat frisking female inmates here?
Yes, as long as they're performing it in a professional manner, as they're trained by the department.
But Kathy Tasikas says an improper pat frisk is not the only thing that happened to her at Albion. Once, while she was working in the prison kitchen, she discovered that a male officer had followed her into a supply closet.
And by the time I heard the door close, he was masturbating in front of me. He just told me, stand there and let me look at you.
Stand there and let me look at you.
I didn't know what to do. I froze.
She says she never reported the incident because she didn't want any trouble. She was 21 years old when she first came to Albion, far from home, lonely, a ripe target for someone like Lyle Baker. Baker was just a few years out of the Corrections Officers Academy when he transferred from a men's prison to Albion in 1989. He says he had gone through a bitter divorce and felt that women were always trying to use him. Working at Albion provided a way to get even.
We're here now. It's like now it's my turn. You know, I'm in control.
His training failed to change that attitude, and neither did the prospect of being reported and investigated.
To me, you're gonna have to get a picture of me actually having intercourse with this inmate to prove it. Otherwise, it's my word against hers.
Why do you think it was that you never got caught?
I knew the system. I knew when I could do it. I knew when the sergeants were gonna make rounds.
But there was one thing Lyle Baker had not counted on. Kathy Tasikas.
And I seen a nurse, she's a very attractive woman. I says, hey, you want to start some rumors? I said, let's go for a ride.
What he did would change their lives forever and outrage Lyle's fellow officers.
A man took an oath to do something and do the right thing, and he violated it. He violated us.
When we come back, you're going to hear all sides of the story. You're going to hear more from Lyle Baker. You're going to hear from Kathy Tasikas, and you're going to hear from the men, which say that it probably should never happened. But first also coming up next, a Clark County School District was sued by pro-life over alleged First Amendment violations. This happened last month. All those rights were violated. It's a case of schools violating their free speech. Stay with us. Before we continue this investigation, let's look at a school district that was sued by pro-life students over alleged First Amendment right violations. Take a look.
The Clark County School District hit with a lawsuit. Students alleging their First Amendment rights to free speech were repeatedly violated. Fox 5's Kim Passoff is outside district headquarters to explain. Kim?
Yeah, members of the Students for Life Club say that their First Amendment was violated, that their pro-life views were repeatedly censored. This is the lawsuit that they filed against the district and their high school, East Career and Technical Academy, laying out those allegations of discrimination.
I really do believe that high school should be a point in which students are able to grow in their core beliefs and expand and look into different viewpoints.
Felipe Avila, now a college freshman, spent 4 years at East Career and Technical Academy, where he was the leader of the Students for Life Club.
I consider myself to be a very devoted student in my education, and it can be tough when you have an entire team of administrators actively working against you.
He says he and the club were repeatedly censored.
So we had a flyer that we submitted announcing one of our meetings, and the assistant principal at the time, she told us that it was too controversial.
The group also tried to put an ad in the student newspaper where other clubs were allowed to promote meetings. But again, he says they were told no.
The school basically ignored our request, and they refused to give anything in writing. And what we would see a lot of times is I would be in the middle of class, and they would pull me out of class to give me a verbal denial. And it was very, very clear that they didn't want anything in writing.
Felipe says he felt targeted for trying to share an unpopular viewpoint.
It came to the point where I was pulled out of class numerous times a day just to receive a denial. So this was very disruptive to my educational experience on campus.
He says though the Students for Life pro-life message was often censored, this pro-choice poster was displayed in a classroom.
First Amendment rights should be protected regardless of whether you're pro-life or pro-choice. So as much as this is about protecting pro-life speech, it's really about protecting freedom of speech for anyone. We're pushing back, and we want to make sure that students have their First Amendment rights protected.
And we reached out to CCSD about this lawsuit. They say that they cannot comment on pending litigation. Back in 2015, the district was sued by another student when she was not allowed to start a pro-life club at her high school. Reporting live tonight, Kim Passoff, Fox 5 News, local, Las Vegas.
And that lawsuit against CCSD was filed in federal court on Thursday. We'll have a link to the complaint on our website, fox5vegas.com.
I just skimmed through it, but first of all, like we talked about with Hip Hughes, schools limit free speech. You can't say this, you can't say that. Schools limit. Think of this. Jeff is a man who is firm in his pants, firm in his beliefs. He got suspended, went to the court and the court said that they have limits. Schools have a right to limit free speech. In fact, I play Hip Hughes and I got to. Coming up, Lyle Baker tells his side of the story of when he continues to sexually abuse Kathy DeSikis, and the men who worked with Lyle Baker say it should never have happened. Stay with us. We are now out of time, but we're gonna continue this on Friday. So the question is, why is Lyle Baker speaking out? Why did he sexually abuse Kathy DeSikis? You're going to hear all sides of the story from Lyle Baker, Kathy DeSikis, and the men who worked with Lyle Baker. Here's a preview.
In a way, I was making them building up their character.
building up their character.
That's just a second picture. Okay. Don't miss the conclusion. Don't miss the conclusion to this investigation. Also, another case. We're going to test you to see if you would be a bystander or not know what's going on. Brothers Keepers. That's also on Friday. That's Give Me a Break for this Wednesday. We'll see you for the 1 year anniversary of Oxford. We'll see you again to Give Me a Break Friday. I hope you've had a great day. For all of us here at YouTube and Give Me a Break, good night, everyone.